Hey there, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. Today we're going to talk all about how to grow peppers from seeds all the way to transplanting. Okay, we're going to talk about growing peppers, chilies, peppers, whatever you call them in your country. We tend to call everything peppers. I know in some countries it's a chili if it's hot, it's a pepper if it's sweet. We just call them all peppers here. But how do you grow them? How do you grow them from seed? Some people seem to have a hard time growing peppers from seed, and they are frustrating to a lot of folks. But really, there's not a lot you can do to go wrong if you have a few things stored up in your head, if you know some things, if you learn some things. So what we're going to do is assume you don't know anything about growing peppers from seeds. So this is going to be kind of a how-to, a beginner level course on how to grow peppers from seeds. I'm going to give you several options. First of all, you need to know some things. Peppers are a warm season plant. They need to have temperatures in order for the seeds to germinate, the soil temperature needs to be between 70 and 90 degrees. You're not going to get fast germination with peppers in general, but if you've got colder temperatures than that, you're going to get a real slow germination, and those seeds stand a chance to rot in the ground. So generally, when you're starting seeds with peppers, if you're doing it indoors, you want to have a heat source to bring your temperature, your soil temperature up into the 70s, the 80s, ideally about 85 degrees is perfect. Most folks will use a seed mat, a heat mat for that sits under your seed trays. If you don't have seed starting equipment, you don't have lights, you don't have a heat mat, you don't have a place to start seeds indoors, you need to then wait until the outdoor temperatures are consistently in, let me check my notes. You want your days at least to be in the 70s, so those seeds will have a nice warm seed bed to germinate in. And you want the nights no less than, say, 55 degrees on average. But you want those days to be warm. And the warmer the days, the easier it is to start those peppers. Now, here's the problem with people starting seeds of peppers outdoors is that if you're not in a warm zone, if you're in zone 6, zone 5, you've got a short growing season. And peppers, well, they're heat lovers, and they'll grow through the entire summer, and sometimes they won't fruit for you until it gets nice and hot. So that's why we start them inside. So yeah, if you want to plant pepper seeds, you can do that if you have a long growing season. Just wait until it gets warm outside. Wait until all chance of frost must be gone, and it needs to have actually warm days, soil temperatures in the 70s. So if you're going to start them indoors, you want to look for about 8 weeks, maybe even 10 weeks before your average last frost date. My average last frost date is March the 1st here in Zone 9A, which means I started my pepper plants back in January. We started those seeds indoors. Pepper seeds take a long time to germinate. They're anywhere from 7 days to a whole month. I had some pepper seeds that didn't come up for about 30 days, and finally they came up, and that was with the heat mat. So they take that long to germinate, so don't expect your seeds to pop up right away. I'm going to show you how to plant them, and you can do any number of ways. You can plant them in these big kind of seed cells, which then sit in a tray and then go under your lights. You can plant them, if you're not going to plant too many, just in individual cups. You don't have to transplant. You don't have to, you eliminate one round of transplanting if you use these kind of cups. You can plant multiple seeds in that cup too and just thin them later. You can plant them, like I said, directly in the ground if you wait, but if you're going to do them indoors, you need some sort of a little system. I'm going to demo with this cheap Jiffy growing kit, this greenhouse kit. These are perfectly fine, and these little peat pellets in there that expand and you grow in that medium, perfectly fine. I did that for years with the larger version of this same kit, but I bought this today just so I could show you how to grow some seeds. And while I was at the store, I thought, well, we'll get the seeds from the big box company. We'll get the seeds from Burpee, and we'll grow some sweet peppers here, some Sunbrights. Might as well, right? So let's get this kit all set up. Now, these little kits come with a tray that holds these pellets in these recessed circles. These pellets are little peat pellets, and they're compressed like that. When you put warm water in here, they will expand, and you'll have a fluffy little bag full of peat moss, and we can plant right into that. They also have a humidity dome, which is helpful, keeps the soil from drying out. So let's get this thing hydrated. All right, water's nice and hot. I'm just going to fill this tray up and set it aside. We got a floater. Don't worry about that. Once they start expanding, we could just pop them back in their spot. Okay, now that our little peat pellets have expanded, you can see what they look like there. They've got a little opening in the top. They're kind of juicy. I probably used a bit too much water, but that's okay. We'll leave the humidity dome off while these seeds are germinating and allow them to dry out. Now you can go in and open these bags up a little more to get more growing room if you want to do multiple seeds in each peat pellet. And I suppose if you really thought you had too much water in there, you could squeeze them out a bit. But we're good. These are very forgiving. And like I said, they will dry out pretty quick if you leave that humidity dome off for a day or two. All right, so I'm going to take my little stick and reserve that because we're going to need that. That's the Seed Pusher 5 million, and you can get them at all good gardening shops. We're going to open this set of seeds, Burpee seeds. Typically we plant pepper seeds 1/4 inch deep. Although I was watching Gary Pilarchik. I like Gary's channel. He's one of the gardeners that I learned a lot from in my earlier years. And he was saying that he's done experiments with pepper seeds, and he says basically it doesn't really matter how deep you plant them. But yeah, typically when you're planting pepper seeds, you want to go for 1/4 inch. See, these are about an eighth of an inch wide. So the rule of thumb is twice as deep as the seed is wide. So 1/4 inch is just perfect. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take 2 seeds per little cell. I'm just going to drop them on the top of the surface there. 2 seeds to ensure that we get enough plants. You know, if the germination rate is not perfect, then we're giving ourselves some insurance by putting 2 seeds on each little pellet here. All right. Come on, there we go. 2 seeds in each pellet. Now we can save the rest of these for maybe next season, especially if we like this pepper. All right, so now we're going to take our Seed Pusher 5 million, and we're just going to shove those seeds under the peat about 1/4 inch and cover them over. There, it's as easy as that. Shove them down there and drag some peat over them. Shove them down, drag some peat over. That's how easy it is to get these seeds in the soil. If you're using a seed starting mix, same principle. Once you wet that seed starting mix, it's basically the same stuff as this. It's basically peat moss, and it's wet. You just shove it in and cover them over. Here's some advice for starting seeds if you're not using a system like this and you're using traditional seed cell trays. Get yourself a dedicated seed starting mix, seed and cutting mix. This one is, but they'll say seed starting mix or something, you know, seed starter. You don't want potting mix. You certainly don't want soil from outdoors because you're going to be bringing that inside, and well, you're going to be bringing in all kinds of who knows what's in that soil that's going to hatch and fly through your house, bugs, gnats, things like that. You don't want to bring that in from outside. So get you some seed starting mix and use a fresh mix that hadn't been sitting around outside, and that will ensure you don't get critters. All right, so now we have our seeds in, and let me make sure they're all covered. Phoebe. And you could use anything for a tag. I'm just going to drop that in there so I know what we have. Now, put the humidity dome on if you want. I'm going to leave mine off because once we get up to the lights, I'm going to leave it off because, well, they're pretty wet in there. Let's go put these under the lights. All right, my seed starting mat. Put these up under my lights. Now, I said I was going to take the humidity dome off. Look at all the humidity that's in there. I'm going to take that off for now until I can dry these peat pellets out a little more because they are kind of saturated. So what we're going to do, I have, and maybe you don't have this, but it's something maybe you could look forward to in your future. The heat mat sits on the shelf. It's like a heating mat that you might put on your sore muscles. It has a thermostat with a monitor, and I'm going to put this monitor into one of the soil pellets. And that will tell the thermostat what the temperature is. Then I'm going to plug it in. Okay, the lights are on. I have hanging over here on another shelf my thermostat system. Here's the thermostat. That thermometer is registering the soil temperature of about 100.4 degrees. That's because we used hot water, but we're going to set it to 80 degrees. When that soil comes down and dips below 80 degrees, this heat mat will kick on and raise it sufficiently to where we maintain an 80-degree temperature in the soil. We're going to leave that there and leave the lights on. You don't have to have lights until you see germination, but I like to keep the lights on too because they help provide a source of heat. So we're going to keep that there until we see germination. That will take 7 to 21 days. All right, once your plants come up, you want to have the light on at least 14, maybe 16 hours a day, and the rest of the time you want the light to be off. You want those plants to have sort of a light cycle, a light dark cycle, and you want to grow them under the lights until they need to be potted up. You'll see that your plants will come up and they will have they'll have two leaves when they are germinating. Two leaves. Those are the cotyledons. They're not true leaves. They are like the yolk leaves. They're the food leaves. There's no nutrition in the soil, no nutrition whatsoever. You don't need any. Once you start seeing one set of true leaves, well, you still don't quite need any fertilizer. But once you start seeing that the plants are putting on their second, maybe third set of true leaves, it's time to up pot them and give them some fertilizer. They'll be about an inch, about 2-3 inches tall at that point, and I'll show you what to do next with those plants. They're going to want to come out from under, or out from these little pellets, out from the cells that you germinated seeds in. You're going to want to put them in some soil that has some nutrition because they're going to want to start eating. At that point, you want to develop a good root system. So after they germinate, let's go do the next step. When your seedlings germinate and get their first set of true leaves, they're going to look something like this. These are kind of leggy. These are actually all true leaves. These have dropped, except for that one there. These have dropped their cotyledons because these got a little stressed out. But that's about what they should look like. These Tabasco peppers came up much slower than these Gochujang Kings and these Ancho Poblanos, kind of in the middle. But this is the time to pot them on so that they can get some food and start growing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take some pots like these. I think these are 3.5 inch pots, and you can get these a number of places. I like these. Yeah, we're going to take this, and now we're going to use actual potting soil, not seed starting mix, just regular potting soil, the kind you buy at the store. I have Kellogg's brand potting soil with some perlite mixed in, and we're going to just put some in here and make a hole. Then we're going to pop our pepper out. Where's my pepper popper 5 million? Here it is. Let's go with this guy. Pop the plug out and handle it very gently. That's what you should see. You should see a good root, bunch of roots in here, a good root system. If it's circling much, don't feel afraid to loosen the roots up a bit, even loosen the root ball up a bit. Just drop it into your potting mix, just like that, and fill in around it. Now this pepper plant has something to eat. It's got nutrition because this potting soil has compost in it. If you felt like it, if you really wanted to, if your plants were stressed like mine were, you could feed them a fertilizer. I would use, if they're going back indoors under the lights, use a synthetic liquid fertilizer. If you use an organic fertilizer like fish emulsion on these and you take it indoors, that organic material is going to grow bacteria, possibly fungus and mildew, and you might smell it while you're sleeping. Now what you want to do is just get some synthetic fertilizer, general purpose fertilizer, and cut it by 1/2, even 1/4, because these little plants don't need a lot of nutrition, but if they're looking like they need a boost like these guys do, then yeah, don't be afraid to use the synthetic stuff in a situation like this. The plant doesn't know, the plant doesn't care. This guy has leaf miners already because they've been outside hardening off. All right, so we will put this aside and do some more. Always label them before you move on to another variety. But that's as easy as it is. Once they're about this size, you pot them up so that they can grow. And the goal in these pots is that they grow to be something about this size. That's about the size you want them to plant out in the garden. Something like this. These two peppers are very different. This one's a yellow bell. This one is a Thai chili pepper. You can see that this one is a candidate. Well, let me talk about this because I actually wouldn't do what I'm about to tell you to do to this one. But on some pepper plants, if this wasn't a bell pepper, if it was some sort of a small pepper, note how long and straight and skinny this is. Peppers, you want the peppers, if you want a lot of fruit, you can pinch the growing tip. Just pinch the top right off of there, and that'll force bushing out the sides. However, I've found over the years that larger peppers like bell peppers, banana peppers, they don't respond well to pinching. They will branch out naturally when they get bigger and stockier. But smaller chilies like this Thai chili pepper, I would pinch that one, but it's already naturally starting to branch out. You'll also discover that if you go to the store and buy starts, that sometimes the seed companies pinch them for you to force that branching. But this is what you want. Once you pot them up at that size, you want to wait, let them grow under your grow lights until they get to be about this size, until they're big enough to stand on their own in the garden. And depending on the toughness of your plant or the harshness of your environment, I would put this in my garden. Before you put anything in your garden, however, you want to go through a hardening off process. And a hardening off process, I did it with these at this size. On a day like today when it's overcast, you can bring these out and let them sit a couple hours outside and then take them back in under the lights. If it's real sunny, I wouldn't give them but 15 minutes in direct sunlight on day one. This is a week-long process, otherwise your plants are going to die when you just leave them in the sun for 24 hours a day. You got to harden them off, acclimate them slowly to the full sunlight. On day 2 of the week, I'd leave them out for 30 minutes. On day 3, I'd leave them out in the sun for an hour. On day 4, I'd give them 2 hours. On day 5, I'd give them maybe 3.5 hours. On day 6, I'd give them about 6 hours. And on day 7, I'd see if they could take the whole day. And they'll tell you if they are responding well, they'll look healthy. If they start to turn colors or curl their leaves, you're probably giving them too much sun. Back off a little bit and maybe harden them off a few more days longer. That's the thing about growing indoors, is your plants are under a light that's really not that strong, but the sunlight's so powerful. However, if you start your seeds outdoors, well, they're automatically hardened off because they come up in that sunlight and they're already acclimated to it. So here are my already hardened off little seedlings that I've potted up. Here's some of my peppers, and well, they're starting to grow a little bit larger. This is a Jedi jalapeno. Starting to grow a little bit larger out here in the sun. Here are some red flame cayennes, little guys. Potted them up a couple days ago, but already hardened off. Don't have to mess with them. Here's my single seed challenge, potted up into a styrofoam cup. You could even start seeds in this. This is a orange jalapeno, and it's starting to respond to this soil out here. Just keep these watered, and when they are about this size, they're ready to go into your garden bed or into a pot. Let's put one in a pot. That's a pretty one. I have a bag of commercial potting mix, and I'm going to top off this pot of older potting mix. So at least we'll have the top of our pot filled with fresh mix. This has compost in it. It's got some topsoil in it, some sand, some wood chips, some perlite. Not enough perlite, but I'm not going to fuss with it right now. Yeah, we're gonna use this soil in this big pot. This pot is large enough where I could put 2 pepper plants in here. I think that's what I'm going to do. All right, which ones? Let's put this one. This is a California Wonder. We'll put that one in here, and we'll put that right next to our Thai chili pepper. Just get us a hole about the same size as the pot. Loosen your pepper, and then give it a little tap. So, oh, this has been in here a long time. There we go. Look at the roots. Yeah, those roots are curling around. All right, and just set it right in there and backfill. You now have a pepper plant with a permanent home. This one's starting to get some blossoms on it. Do the same for the other one, and we're off. I keep my label close by. Don't want to forget what we have here. I'll just drop that down in there. Got them all dirty over there. Okay. All right, well, we'll just water these in and let them settle into their new home right over here by these unruly tomatoes that need to be pruned. Water them in good. You want this soil to really snug up around those roots. Now, the smallest pot that I would put a pepper plant in is about a 5-gallon bucket. Maybe a slightly smaller, 4. I wouldn't go anything smaller than 4, because some of these pepper plants can get really large, and if you let them get really large, they'll produce for you a lot of fruit. Once you get your pepper growing, it is wise to have some way to support your pepper. Sometimes people put tomato cages around them, sometimes people tie them to a stake, and I'll show you why. Look at this jalapeno plant. It's tall, it's floppy, and it's planted in a hole with a second plant coming up right beside it that's not staked up, and you can see the wind's blowing it over. This plant has such large leaves at this point that on a windy day like today, the wind would just blow this plant clean over because it's tall and spindly. So I drove a stake in and I just tied it off to the stake with a loose bit of ribbon there. Now, this plant is not needing water. This is just its middle of the hot day defense mechanism. It pumps the water down into the roots and the leaves go a little bit wilty. So we don't have to worry about that plant. He's fine. But I just wanted to show you that a tall spindly pepper plant like that needs to be supported somehow. Once you have your pepper plants planted out in their final home, whether that be a container or in the garden bed, think about fertilization, especially in a container. Plants in a container don't have all the whole garden to go out and roam their roots through and forage for nutrients. They have only you to give them what they need to grow in that container. In a container plant, I would fertilize a pepper plant with an all-around general purpose fertilizer once a month at a minimum, maybe even once every 3 weeks. Yeah, low dose general purpose fertilizer every 3 weeks, and that plant will be in good condition to grow there in that soil. You can back off on the fertilizing, after the plant's done its production run. If you're going to try to overwinter that plant and bring it into the garage or something, just back off. Don't fertilize it until the spring. If they're out in the garden bed, you typically don't need to fertilize them, but a little fertilizer won't hurt them when you put them in. Slow release fertilizer put down in the hole. That's what I do, and then occasionally I'll give them some fish emulsion or a well-balanced liquid fertilizer. But normally, if you're doing your gardening properly and you've got good soil and you're amending each year with compost, normally your peppers will do fine out there in the garden, even if you didn't give them anything. So that's a little bit about peppers, from seeding all the way to putting them in the ground. I wish I had some I could show you how to harvest, but we're going to have to wait on that. Hey, thanks for joining me today on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. If you'd like some excellent seeds and you're looking for some pepper plants, head over to Seeds for Generations. Seeds for Generations. Use my link below in the description and you'll be supporting our channel. That's a great family-run business, Seeds for Generations. They are currently recovering from a fire earlier this spring that wiped out their entire business. So any business you can give their way would be a good thing for everybody involved. So thanks a lot. Hope you have happy gardening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.